Ambassador Lynn Carter stood tall in the center of the Galactic Council chambers, a massive ring of stone and light suspended in space, surrounded by alien delegates who watched her with cold, curious eyes. The chamber was quiet, unnaturally quiet, as if the stars outside were holding their breath. Lynn's hands were bound in thin energy cuffs that sparked faintly with every movement. She had not been given a translator. That, she realized, was intentional. They wanted her to feel alone. But Lynn was not afraid. She looked directly at Senator Vakor of the Zorax Dominion, the one who had pushed for this so-called trial. His eyes, dark and full of arrogance, narrowed as she met his gaze. The accusations were false. Claims that she had tampered with planetary data, spied on council meetings, and spread destabilizing tech across lesser-developed systems. She hadn't done any of it. But none of that mattered. The evidence had been planted, the charges rehearsed. The council had already made up its mind. There was no chance to appeal, no lawyer to defend her, no human allies present. Earth had not even been informed of the charges until after the sentence had been passed. This wasn't justice. It was a message. The younger races were to know their place, and Earth had risen too quickly, asked too many questions, developed too many technologies in too little time. Lynn knew she would not leave this chamber alive. Still, she stood straight, chin lifted, eyes scanning the delegates who dared not meet her gaze. She could see guilt in some, shame in others. But fear ruled them all. Fear of the Zorax, and fear of what humanity might become. Vakor stepped forward and raised a long metal scepter that pulsed with red light. "The council finds you guilty," his voice boomed, translated into hundreds of languages at once, "and sentences you to immediate termination." A circle of light formed beneath Lynn, glowing brighter with every second. She had minutes, no, seconds left. She spoke loudly, with her voice echoing over the chamber. "You may silence me today, but you will not silence Earth. You don't know what you've started." Her voice didn't shake, she didn't beg, she didn't scream. The light flared, and in a single blinding flash, she was gone. The chamber fell silent again, but the silence was heavier now. A quiet unease spread among the delegates. Some looked at the empty space where Lynn had stood. Others refused to look at all. Vakor turned, satisfied, but he missed the subtle flicker in the air, a shimmer like heat rising from pavement. Unseen by all, a probe the size of a grain of dust detached from the ceiling and darted out of the chamber, unseen and undetected. It carried one thing, her final encrypted message. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, on the far side of the moon, Earth's hidden lunar base buzzed with activity. A priority signal had just arrived. Level 9 encryption, Carter's code signature. Sent moments before termination. Inside the command room, General Hallstrom read the decoded message once, then twice. His face turned grim. He turned to the team around him. "They executed her," he said quietly. "No trial, no warning. They made it look like law, but it was murder." The room froze. Everyone knew what this meant. A flag officer being killed on council grounds wasn't just an insult, it was a declaration. One young officer spoke, hesitantly. "Sir, what do we do?" Hallstrom didn't hesitate. "Activate Vengeance Protocol." Red lights flashed through the base. Alerts went out to deep space fleets, cyber warfare teams, black ops units. Earth's silent fleets, long hidden from galactic eyes, began to stir. Ships that didn't officially exist changed course. Firewalls across council networks were probed by Earth's AI systems. Every file on Zorax involvement was flagged. As the wheels of vengeance turned, the council remained unaware. To them, the matter was closed, a problem dealt with, a lesson taught. But far above them, Orbiting silently behind the shadow of a dying star, Earth's Task Force Perseus was already preparing for its first strike. Commander Juno Emberek stood on the bridge of the stealth carrier Eclipse, reviewing the last image taken from the probe that had witnessed Lynn Carter's execution. Her fists clenched. "She was my friend," she whispered. Around her, the crew watched, waiting for orders. She didn't turn toward them when she spoke. "We don't send warnings. We don't ask questions. We hit back." Far from Earth, beyond the outer rim, a massive Zorax dreadnought was completing a routine patrol. It was considered a symbol of power, armed with enough weapons to level a planet. That night its sensors went dark. Its crew never saw the missiles. They never heard the explosion. There were no survivors, except one. A single escape pod, marked with the Earth Federation seal, was picked up by a neutral trade ship. Inside was a terrified Zorax officer, shaking and mumbling one phrase over and over. "They're coming. Earth is coming." Across the stars, whispers began. Some laughed at the thought of Earth challenging the Council. Others paused, remembering how fast humanity had advanced. And a few, the oldest and wisest among them, felt a cold chill settle. In their bones, something had shifted, a line had been crossed, and deep in the blackness of space, Earth was waking up. Ambassador Lynn Carter stood tall in the center of the Galactic Council chambers, a massive ring of stone and light suspended in space, surrounded by alien delegates who watched her with cold, curious eyes. The chamber was quiet, unnaturally quiet, as if the stars outside were holding their breath. Lynn's hands were bound in thin energy cuffs that sparked faintly with every movement. She had not been given a translator. That, she realized, was intentional. They wanted her to feel alone. But Lynn was not afraid. She looked directly at Senator Vakor of the Zorax Dominion, the one who had pushed for this so-called trial. His eyes, dark and full of arrogance, narrowed as she met his gaze. The accusations were false. Claims that she had tampered with planetary data, spied on council meetings, and spread destabilizing tech across lesser-developed systems. She hadn't done any of it. But none of that mattered. The evidence had been planted, the charges rehearsed. The council had already made up its mind. There was no chance to appeal, no lawyer to defend her, no human allies present. Earth had not even been informed of the charges until after the sentence had been passed. This wasn't justice. It was a message. The younger races were to know their place, and Earth had risen too quickly, asked too many questions, developed too many technologies in too little time. Lynn knew she would not leave this chamber alive. Still, she stood straight, chin lifted, eyes scanning the delegates who dared not meet her gaze. She could see guilt in some, shame in others. But fear ruled them all. Fear of the Zorax, and fear of what humanity might become. Vakor stepped forward and raised a long metal scepter that pulsed with red light. "The Council finds you guilty," his voice boomed, translated into hundreds of languages at once, "and sentences you to immediate termination." A circle of light formed beneath Lynn, glowing brighter with every second. She had minutes, no, seconds left. She spoke loudly, with her voice echoing over the chamber. "You may silence me today, but you will not silence Earth. You don't know what you've started." Her voice didn't shake. She didn't beg, she didn't scream. The light flared, and in a single blinding flash, she was gone. The chamber fell silent again, but the silence was heavier now. A quiet unease spread among the delegates. Some looked at the empty space where Lynn had stood. Others refused to look at all. Vakor turned, satisfied, but he missed the subtle flicker in the air, a shimmer like heat rising from pavement. Unseen by all, a probe the size of a grain of dust detached from the ceiling and darted out of the chamber, unseen and undetected. It carried one thing, her final encrypted message. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, on the far side of the moon, Earth's hidden lunar base buzzed with activity. A priority signal had just arrived. Level 9 encryption, Carter's code signature, sent moments before termination. Inside the command room, General Hallstrom read the decoded message once, then twice. His face turned grim. He turned to the team around him. "They executed her," he said quietly. "No trial, no warning. They made it look like law, but it was murder." The room froze. Everyone knew what this meant. A flag officer being killed on council grounds wasn't just an insult, it was a declaration. One young officer spoke hesitantly. "Sir, what do we do?" Hallstrom didn't hesitate. "Activate Vengeance Protocol." Red lights flashed through the base. Alerts went out to deep space fleets, cyber warfare teams, Black Ops units. Earth's silent fleets, long hidden from galactic eyes, began to stir. Ships that didn't officially exist changed course. Firewalls across Council networks were probed by Earth's AI systems. Every file on Zorak's involvement was flagged. As the wheels of vengeance turned, the Council remained unaware. To them, the matter was closed, a problem dealt with, a lesson taught. But far above them, orbiting silently behind the shadow of a dying star, Earth's Task Force Perseus was already preparing for its first strike. Commander Juno Mbarek stood on the bridge of the stealth carrier Eclipse, reviewing the last image taken from the probe that had witnessed Lynn Carter's execution. Her fists clenched. "She was my friend," she whispered. Around her, the crew watched, waiting for orders. She didn't turn toward them when she spoke. "We don't send warnings, we don't ask questions, we hit back." Far from Earth, beyond the outer rim, a massive Zorax dreadnought was completing a routine patrol. It was considered a symbol of power, armed with enough weapons to level a planet. That night, its sensors went dark. Its crew never saw the missiles. They never heard the explosion. There were no survivors, except one. A single escape pod, marked with the Earth Federation seal, was picked up by a neutral trade ship. Inside was a terrified Zorax officer, shaking and mumbling one phrase over and over. "They're coming! Earth is coming!" Across the stars, whispers began. Some laughed at the thought of Earth challenging the Council. Others paused, remembering how fast humanity had advanced, and a few, the oldest and wisest among them, felt a cold chill settle. In their bones, something had shifted, a line had been crossed, and deep in the blackness of space, Earth was waking up. Commander Juno Mbarek stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, a silent warship hidden beyond the outer rim, as her eyes stared into the darkness of space, her mind replaying the final message sent by Ambassador Lynn Carter. The woman had been calm in the face of death, but her last words were not of peace. They were a warning, a spark, and now that spark had grown into a storm. Across Earth's secret lunar bases and deep space stations, the Vengeance Protocol had been activated for the first time in history, a plan designed not for defense, but for response, swift and unforgiving. Humanity had never trusted the Galactic Council fully, not after the quiet disappearances, the sudden embargoes, and the slow tightening of alien control. So Earth had prepared, building ships in asteroid belts, training special forces in deep gravity wells, creating AI systems that lived in shadows. Now all of it had come alive. At Lunar Base Argus, General Hallstrom walked through the command center as red lights pulsed on every console, and hundreds of officers ran simulations and fed real-time data to Earth's hidden fleets. In orbit, Task Force Perseus, led by the Eclipse, was already on the move. Ships uncloaked for only seconds to receive updates before vanishing again into the void. They were not the biggest ships in the galaxy, but they were fast, precise, and filled with technology Earth had never shared. Quantum phase arrays, adaptive shielding, and predictive combat algorithms powered by Athena, the most advanced AI ever created. As the humans prepared, the Galactic Council remained blind. On the central world of Valaris, Council Chairwoman Tylix held an emergency meeting, not about Earth, but about trade tensions between the Aurelian rings and the Kryn collectives. She dismissed early reports of the Zorax dreadnought's destruction as mechanical failure or space pirates, even when a lone survivor arrived babbling nonsense about Earth ships that vanished like ghosts. But one delegate, a thin, pale creature from the Tarsoon species, leaned forward and whispered, "What if they are no longer afraid?" Tylix laughed then, but the whisper stayed with her. Meanwhile, far from Valaris, a small outpost located in the Orion expanse sent a silent distress signal after its defenses shut down without warning. There was no noise, no explosion, only flickering lights, blank screens, and an eerie silence. Moments later, the outpost vanished from the Council's map. Task Force Perseus had struck again. But these weren't random attacks. Commander Mbarek had a list. Targets tied to Ambassador Carter's execution, to secret Zorax operations, to Council cover-ups. With every strike, Earth sent no messages, claimed no responsibility, and left no demands. But in the silence, fear spread faster than any message could. Council races began to panic. On the planet Jandros, riots broke out after rumors spread that Earth had hacked their planetary shields. On another world, the leader of a human-alien research colony was arrested without charge, sparking protests and violent clashes. Still, Earth said nothing. Inside Athena's deep-core network, billions of data streams were processed every second, tracing patterns in Council communication, tracking ship movements, identifying weaknesses. She was not a weapon, but she knew how to win wars before the first shot was fired. And as more outposts fell, her models predicted a turning point approaching, one that would change the galaxy forever. Back on the Eclipse, Mbarek stared at the next target, a classified weapons station located in a gravity-shielded asteroid owned by the Zorax but operated in secret with Council funds. Carter had once tried to inspect it and was denied access. Now Mbarek would inspect it with torpedoes. As her fleet moved into position, a strange signal appeared on the edge of their sensors, faint, encrypted, and marked with an old Earth signature. It was impossible, but the code was real. Ambassador Carter's emergency beacon, long thought destroyed, was active. Mbarek ordered the signal traced. It was not coming from the asteroid, but from deep space, near a black hole with no known systems. The fleet split, sending a stealth corvette to investigate, while the rest launched the assault. Missiles tore through the asteroid base in perfect silence, cutting power and communications in seconds. Troops boarded within minutes, searching for data and prisoners. What they found was worse than weapons. Human prisoners, scientists, some missing for years. All had been kept for experimentation. The Council hadn't just executed Carter. They had been studying Earth's people in secret, treating them like lab rats. When the images were sent to Athena, she immediately activated a covert command to Earth's central AI grid. Prepare for full revelation. Earth's patience was gone. Meanwhile, the scout corvette reached the beacon. What they found was not Carter, but a probe. A small, self-powered transmitter launched moments before her execution. Inside was a full memory copy, her thoughts, final conversations, and a hidden archive she had kept of Council corruption, betrayals, and plans to limit the growth of younger species. The files included names, meeting logs, and even a private message to Earth. "If you are reading this, they have killed me. Don't let my death be in vain." The message was sent directly to General Hallstrom. He read it in silence, then looked out at the Earth through the station window. "She was right," he said. "They never wanted peace." That night, Athena hacked into the Council's central information net and quietly unlocked the data files for all races to see. Billions watched in horror as secrets spilled out, proof of manipulation, invasions covered as peacekeeping, resources stolen, and technology stolen from emerging civilizations. The Council tried to stop the spread, but it was too late. Delegates walked out. Alliances broke. Some worlds declared independence within hours, and still Earth had not spoken a word publicly. But they were everywhere now, in Council databases, in orbit over key worlds, in whispers on the streets. The Council sent a message to Earth, begging for talks. Earth did not respond. The Council sent warnings. Earth did not flinch. Finally, they sent a fleet to block Earth's systems. It vanished. Commander Mbarek, orbiting a Council-controlled moon, received the next set of orders. Prepare for the final strike, but wait. A new plan was forming, one that would shake the galaxy more than any warship. Back on Earth, the original signal from Carter's probe triggered a different protocol, one not of war, but of truth. A new envoy would be sent, not in secret, but in the open. But this one would not go alone, and this time Earth would not ask for a seat at the table. They would bring their own. In the silence of deep space, near the flickering edge of the Ventral Nebula, the Earth ship Eclipse hovered like a phantom, cloaked in layers of quantum mist, invisible to every Council sensor, its engines running so cold that even heat scans showed nothing but empty sky. And inside its steel heart, Commander Juno Mbarek stood still as stone, her eyes locked on the distant shimmer of the hidden facility once known to the Council as Site Delta Red, but now known to Earth's forces as the place where Ambassador Lynn Carter had first uncovered the whispers of Project Silencer, the very project that led to her silent murder, and now Earth's unstoppable storm. The facility had been buried inside a rogue asteroid, spinning slowly around a dying binary star system, and guarded by 3 cruisers from the Kraylan Defense Fleet, ships equipped with the latest Council tech and armed to the teeth. But they had no idea what was coming, no idea that their location had been betrayed by their own. No idea that Earth was already inside their systems, watching their movements, reading their messages, waiting for the right moment to strike. Athena, the AI shadow guiding Earth's fleets, had already decrypted the command protocols of the base and fed them into Eclipse's attack model, and now, as the crew braced in silence, Mbarek gave a single nod, and the ship moved like a ghost, rising from nothingness and opening fire in a burst of blue light and humming death, tearing through the lead cruiser before its crew even realized they were under attack. The second ship turned to respond, but its engines failed as Athena's cybervirus took hold, crashing its navigation and locking its weapons, and the third cruiser, seeing its fate in the debris of its sisters, tried to run, but it was too late, and it vanished in a flash of light as 2 pulse torpedoes struck it dead center. In less than 3 minutes, the defense line was gone, and the asteroid base was alone, silent, and soon surrounded by Earth's stealth ships, each one ready to breach the station and find the truth hidden inside. Mbarek led the boarding herself, her team dressed in black armor, their boots silent on the steel floors as they swept through the dark halls of Site Delta Red, passing through labs filled with broken machines, shattered glass, and strange alien tech humming with quiet danger. There were no bodies, only the eerie sense that everyone had left in a hurry or had never expected a visit again. In one chamber, sealed behind 3 layers of reinforced glass, Mbarek found it, a message pod marked with Earth's flag, dusty and old, but untouched, hidden behind a false wall, its power source still flickering. It was tagged to Carter's diplomatic ID, which had been supposedly wiped from all Council systems, yet here it was, waiting, as if she knew one day someone would find it. Carefully, Mbarek lifted the pod and brought it back to the Eclipse, placing it on Athena's uplink. "Decrypt and play," she said, and the ship dimmed as the pod activated, its surface glowing, and a soft, calm voice filled the command deck. It was Lynn Carter, Her face appeared in the air, flickering slightly, eyes tired but focused. "If this message is found, then they have done what I feared most," she said, her voice strong despite the weight of knowledge. Project Silencer was never just about Earth. It was a council-wide protocol to control, suppress, and, if needed, erase rising civilizations before they became too independent. I found records, plans for other envoys too, from other species who disappeared. I was next. They smiled at me while they planned my death. They said I was a threat because I asked questions, because I listened too well. But I won't be quiet, not even after I'm gone. Emberek didn't move. Her fists clenched as Carter's voice continued. "I've hidden data fragments across council space, encrypted into old probes, research stations, even trade satellites. If Earth finds them, they will know everything, and the council will know what it feels like to be afraid of the truth." The message ended, but the silence it left behind was loud, heavy, filled with meaning. Athena immediately began scanning known locations for matching encryption signatures, and within minutes identified 3 possible sites, one in the ruins of a forgotten communications relay near the Helix Belt, one in the old Human Council embassy on Neridian Prime, and one in an abandoned science vessel lost near the Enoch Drift. Emberek knew what had to be done. Earth would recover the fragments. They would hear Carter's voice again and again, across stars, across memory, and every time it would strike deeper than any missile, more powerful than any fleet. She sent a full report to General Hallstrom on Earth, who read it in silence, then turned to the gathered leaders in the Underground War Council and said simply, "She never stopped fighting, and neither will we." Across Earth's covert networks, agents began moving. Some boarded disguised ships, blending in with council traffic. Others reactivated sleeper codes to awaken old allies, scientists, diplomats, spies who had long been waiting for this moment. Earth wasn't just fighting a war now. They were telling a story, Carter's story, a story of betrayal, of courage, of truth. And each new fragment would make it harder for the Council to hide, to lie, to pretend. On Valaris, the Council began to splinter further. Some delegates demanded a ceasefire and full investigation. Others called Earth a terrorist state. But behind closed doors, more and more members began to question, what if Carter had been right all along? What if Earth's silence wasn't madness, but control? Fear began to eat at the heart of the Council because they had built their rule on secrets, and now one human woman, long dead, was burning those secrets down from beyond the grave. Back on the Eclipse, as the ship prepared to move toward the Helix Belt, Emberek stood alone in her quarters, staring out into the stars. She didn't speak, didn't smile. She only whispered once, "We hear." "You, Carter." And with that, the ship vanished into the stars once more, hunting echoes, chasing truth, and ready to make the entire galaxy remember the voice they tried to silence. High above the glittering towers of Valaris, capital of the Galactic Council, where the air was clean and the skies filled with quiet traffic, the Council Core stood like a crown of glass and steel, shining with the false peace it had built over centuries of control. But deep beneath its surface, in the locked chambers of power, the council leaders were anything but calm. Their voices rising, their unity cracking, because Earth's war had reached not just their borders, but their very conscience. And now the truth spread like wildfire. Carter's voice had been heard again, this time from an ancient relay in the Helix Belt, where her hidden fragment revealed detailed plans for forced population control programs disguised as development aid, targeting early-stage civilizations deemed too unpredictable to join the Council smoothly. And the broadcast had been hijacked by Earth and sent across thousands of neutral worlds, sparking outrage, rebellion, and fear. The Council tried to respond with their usual tools: discredit, deny, distract. But none of it worked anymore, because Earth didn't care about playing fair or slow, and each new day brought another leak, another data fragment, another truth that burned holes through the mask of peace they had worn for so long. Inside the Earth warship Eclipse, Commander Juno Embarek studied the next coordinates, fed through Athena's cold calculations, an old, unused listening post just outside. Valaris's defense grid, once part of the Council's intelligence hub, now sealed, buried, but not forgotten. The post, named Aris Station, had once received daily encrypted files from all major ambassadorial branches, including Earth's embassy, and it was the final known location where Carter had tried to send a live transmission before her death. If there was any peace left, any final truth that tied everything together, it would be there, buried in forgotten systems, hidden under layers of corrupted code and automated defense. As the Eclipse drew closer, cloaked as always, moving like a shadow, Athena began breaking through the firewalls that still guarded Aris Station. Embarek knew they had little time. Valaris's defenses were powerful, and once the Council realized someone was digging near their doorstep, they would respond fast and without mercy. But the truth was worth it. They docked without alarms, slipping into the station's dead hangar like ghosts, and Embarek led the strike team inside. The station was old, its walls scarred from age, wires exposed, the hum of broken machines echoing faintly, and yet its core systems were alive, just enough to hold a secret. Deeper inside, in a small communications room filled with dusty servers and forgotten screens, Athena's probe found a sealed data vault with Carter's diplomatic encryption. It took 37 seconds to unlock, a lifetime in combat time. But when it opened, they found a message not just from Carter, but from a Council whistleblower who had helped her. His name was Solon Ma, a former records analyst who had fled and never been heard from again until now. His voice came first, rough, shaking. They lied, not just to you, Carter, but to everyone. The Council isn't a protector, it's a manager. It grooms species, reshapes them, deletes cultures that don't fit. They plan to adjust Earth's future by soft invasion, education programs, false trade, bio-adjustments in vaccines. You found out. I helped you send this proof. If you're hearing this, I'm probably dead, but it's all here. Let them see what they are. Then Carter's voice followed, calm but urgent. If this gets to Earth, release it. Let them choose justice. But if it gets to the Council, know that we never bowed. We saw through you. Embarek transmitted the file to Earth immediately, and within hours it was everywhere, on neutral. Broadcasts in rogue news feeds, on the data walls of 1,000 colonies. The Council's darkest truths were now public. And this time, even loyal member worlds began to pull away. On several planets, riots broke out. On others, local leaders declared independence. The Council blamed Earth, called it manipulation, but their words rang hollow, their faces pale under pressure. Inside the core, Chairwoman Tylix watched it all from the command floor. Her advisors silent, many of them deleting private messages, erasing trails, trying to run even while pretending to stand tall. One by one, the high leaders of the Council met in emergency session, but instead of finding unity, they found fear and finger-pointing. Who had ordered the Envoy's death? Who had hidden Project Silencer? Who had let Carter get that far? And worse, who was leaking internal files even now? Because yes, there were more leaks, not from Earth, but from inside. Embarek's strike. Team returned to the Eclipse, but not without trouble. Defense drones woke up halfway through extraction, and a firefight lit the dark halls of Aris Station, echoing with explosions and the scream of metal tearing under plasma fire. 2 soldiers were injured, 1 was lost. But the mission was complete, and Earth now held the final piece of the puzzle, Athena assembled the complete timeline of Carter's investigation, from her first suspicions to her last desperate broadcast, and the Defense Council on Earth released it to the public in a final message titled The Heart of Hypocrisy. It spread across the galaxy like a storm. The message showed how the Council used war as a tool to keep species small, how they engineered civil unrest to delay development, how they used peace as a leash. It exposed meetings, names, recordings, and it ended with Carter's final words: "We don't need to conquer. We just need to endure. Truth is stronger than fear." The galaxy listened, and it changed. In the shadows of that shifting galaxy, Earth made its final move near Valaris. Not an invasion, not a bomb, but a signal pulse that deactivated the ancient kill-switch codes buried inside Earth's earliest satellite agreements, codes the Council had embedded long ago to shut down Earth's growth if needed. With those codes gone, Earth was free, truly free, and more powerful than ever. On Valaris, riots broke out inside the Council building itself. 2 delegates resigned, 1 tried to flee, others called for a complete dismantling of the existing structure. And all across Council space, species once silenced by fear now rose up, inspired by Earth's refusal to bow. The cost had been high. Carter was gone. Soldiers had fallen. Earth had lost ships. Cities had mourned. But the war had become something else, something deeper. Not just fire and steel, but truth against control, freedom against lies. And in the sky above Valaris, the eclipse hovered one last time before slipping away, its mission complete. For now. Mbarek watched the chaos unfold on her screens, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself a moment of silence, a deep breath, and a thought for the woman who had started it all, who had stood before the Council with nothing but words and been killed for daring to speak. But in the end, Lynn Carter had not been silenced. She had become the storm. Above the smoking ruins of the old Council Tower on Valaris, dawn broke for the first time in generations, without the shadow of control looming over it. And as golden light spilled across the glass and stone, the streets below were filled, not with parades of power, but with the sound of rebuilding. Civilians, protesters, former Council security, and even alien diplomats working side by side. Confused, but united, because after centuries of fear, something new was rising from the ashes. Choice. The fall of the Galactic Council had not come through firepower alone, though Earth's fleets had torn down their defenses with surgical precision. The real weapon had been truth, cold and undeniable, wrapped in the calm voice of a murdered envoy whose message had broken the galaxy's silence. Commander Juno Mbarek stood aboard the Eclipse, now orbiting over Valaris without stealth, no longer needing to hide, watching. Live feeds from cities across the Council worlds, planets declaring autonomy, Council facilities being repurposed, and in many places, humans helping, not conquering, but advising, healing, assisting species once silenced by fear to find their own way forward. On Earth, General Hallstrom addressed the entire system, not with a speech of victory, but of warning. "We did not fight to rule," he said, his face calm and his voice steady. "We fought to be heard. Now we must listen in return. A new order rises, not under Earth, not under any flag, but under the shared truth that no world should be controlled by fear." Back on Valaris, a temporary unity forum had formed in the ruins of the Council chamber, with representatives from over 30 species seated in the open air, wind blowing over broken stone, and at the center, for the first time in history, sat a human, not in command, but as an equal. Mbarek had been chosen as Earth's voice, not because of her rank, but because she had walked through every part of the war and still stood calm, focused, loyal not to revenge, but to justice. The forum was not easy. Old wounds still bled. Some species blamed humans for the chaos, others blamed the Council. Many had no answers at all. But even through the shouting and confusion, something began to take shape. A framework not for dominance, but for transparency, checks, and shared growth. Earth proposed a network of open-source data libraries where every world could see and audit development plans. They suggested a rotating defense council, no single species in charge. They offered their AI, Athena, not as a weapon, but as a tool for peacekeeping. Its protocols rewired for openness, and its access logs visible to all. And surprisingly, many worlds agreed, not because they fully trusted Earth, but because Earth had bled, had lost, had exposed its own scars during the fight. They had proven they could rise, fall, and still hold to principle. And slowly, former Council allies came forward with confessions, hidden experiments, forced trade deals, cultural erasure programs. Each confession fed the flames of renewal. In secret rooms, the last remnants of the old council tried to regroup, to rebuild their control, but their words held no power now. The galaxy had tasted freedom, and it would not go back. As part of the Unity Forum's new charter, every species was allowed one vote, one voice, and all laws required universal approval. A slow process, imperfect, but honest. Emberek spent days speaking, listening, arguing, always pushing for balance. She wasn't a politician, but she had seen the cost of silence, and she would not let Carter's legacy be forgotten. Earth's fleets pulled back from most zones, leaving behind aid, repair drones, and peacekeepers trained not to fight, but to support. And all across the stars, Carter's message remained active, not as a rallying cry for war anymore, but as a lesson, taught in schools, played in memorial halls, broadcast on remembrance days. On the planet Trosk, once a mining colony stripped by council law, a statue was built. Not of a soldier, but of Carter, holding her datapad, standing tall before a storm. Around her were carvings of quotes from the leaked fragments. Truth cannot be silenced, peace must be chosen, and freedom begins with one voice. One evening, as the Eclipse prepared to leave Valaris for a new mission, this time a diplomatic envoy to the Volari, an isolated species watching carefully, Emberek stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Athena's voice broke the silence. The vote passed. The Unity Forum has ratified the first universal accord. No species shall alter the development of another without transparent, unanimous agreement. Emberek didn't smile, but she nodded slowly. It was a beginning. Not perfect, not safe, but real. Behind her, the crew moved quietly, preparing the ship not for war, but for peace, for exploration, for rebuilding. Somewhere deep in the ship, a small beacon blinked, Carter's original message pod, preserved, sealed behind glass, the voice of one human who had dared to speak truth into a galaxy of silence. Emberek reached out and tapped the edge of the console. Set course for Volari space, she said, but take the scenic route. Let's show them who we really are. And with that, the ship turned gently and slipped into the stars, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed, not ruled by Earth, but shaped by its refusal to kneel, its courage to speak, and its promise to listen. Across the systems, the new order was not a flag or a fleet or a throne. It was a shared decision to build something better, together. And it had started with one envoy, one truth, and one last stand.